Everybody, we're going to talk about the Articles of Confederation today as we're going to continue with our country's founding documents. So by the end of this lesson slash video, we should be able to describe the historical events that led to drafting and adopting the Articles of Confederation, define and explain the meaning of the term Confederation, and talk about the different provisions of the Articles of Confederation. And then lastly, we'll be able to analyze the Articles of Confederation and identify their strengths and weaknesses. So this video will prompt you to pause the video at different times. So please follow the subs instructions and my instructions as we move throughout this video to guide you through class today. For the first part, we have a timeline to go through about the different events that led up to the drafting and the adoption of the Articles of Confederation. So if you'll take out a blank sheet of lined paper or your notebook, we'll get started. You can pause the video for a moment now while everybody gets out their note-taking supplies. Okay, so first we need to talk about the series of actions that were taken by Great Britain in its North American colonies that led to the colonists' resentment. So first we have the Proclamation line in 1763, and this is at the end of the 7-Year War, or the French and Indian War. Great Britain acquired this huge piece of French land within the North American territory. Next we have 1 year later the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act in 1765. The Sugar Act, they taxed molasses and sugar. The Stamp Act, they taxed all paper goods and literally put a stamp on things that identified what was increase in tax. Everything from newspapers to playing cards became taxed. Then 2 years later in 1767 we have the Townshend Acts, and the Townshend Acts, they taxed glass, paint, oil, tea, lead, and paper, they meaning Great Britain. Then we have in 1773 the Tea Act, and we should be familiar with this one from 8th grade U.S. history. The intention of the Tea Act, obviously we know it taxed tea, but the reason that they implemented this specific act is because Great Britain wanted to and needed to bail out the East India Trading Company, which was a crucial component to the British economy. And then we have, lastly, the Intolerable Acts in 1774. So we have a couple of different things that were forbidden or taxed, or different actions taken that really upset the colonists. So town meetings were forbidden, so the right to assemble was taken away. The Boston Harbor was closed, and this was a crucial port for the colonies. British officer trial procedures changed, so British officers could, if they committed a crime in one colony, they could be tried in a different colony or even go back to Great Britain. So they were kind of let off the hook in a way. And then lastly, the housing regulations for British troops were changed, and that they could just come to anybody's house and stay with them. All right, next we have a couple of other events in the North American colonies that further aggravated tensions between Great Britain and American colonists. And if you can feel free to rewind the video at this point or pause it and go back to the slide, let everybody write it down now that I listed through everything. So let me move on with these events that aggravated the tensions between Great Britain and the American colonists. We have the Non-Importation Agreement in October of 1767. This was a protest against different British revenue procedures. The Boston Massacre in March of 1770 was when there was this mob that attacked these British soldiers, and so the British killed and shot lots of colonists through this massacre. Then the Boston Tea Party, we should be very familiar with. It was a political protest in which they threw this huge shipment of tea into the Boston Harbor, which is what led to the Boston Harbor being closed. Then we have the battles of Concord and Lexington, which was the first battle in the American Revolution. So at this time, I'm going to ask the sub to pause my video and move to a new tab that is already open on the teacher desktop and play this short clip that summarizes the Battle of Concord and Lexington. All right, so welcome back. Now at this time, I've got another short clip about this last event, the Battle of Bunker Hill, another important event in the American Revolution, just about 2 months after the Battle of Concord and Lexington. So again, I'll ask the sub to pause this video and then go to the Battle of Bunker Hill History Channel clip that's in another open tab. All right, welcome back again. We have just 5 more quick events that were crucial to the development of the Articles of Confederation. August 1775, King George II declares the American colonies in rebellion. July 4th, 1776, we know the Declaration of Independence was signed. This is when the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. June 1776, Congress appointed a committee to draft the Articles of Confederation to create a new government for these united colonies. And then, fast forward to 1777 in November, the Second Continental Congress approved the Articles of Confederation and sent them to the states for ratification. So this is a huge amount of time that the Articles of Confederation were being drafted. We have June 1776 to November 1777. It's almost a year and a half of time that it took the Second Continental Congress to approve, well, first for it to be written and then for them to approve the Articles of Confederation and have all of the states sign off with approval. Then, March 1781, the Articles of Confederation were ratified. So essentially, they were adopted officially. So at this point, I'm going to ask the sub to pause the video and pass out a copy of the Articles of Confederation graphic organizer that they should find on my desk. And then you can play the video when you come back. Okay, welcome back. So everyone should have a copy of the Articles of Confederation graphic organizer in front of them with their name, first and last, and class period written on it. So my question for you is, what does the word Confederation mean to you? So in about 30 seconds to a minute, talk with your neighbor or your table about what you think the word Confederation means or what it means to you. So pause the video. After you pause the video, talk about it. The sub can ask different answers around the room. And then I'll let you know the real definition of Confederation. All right, so now you can pause the video. All right, welcome back. So the top of your graphic organizer, there's a place for you to write our formal definition of Confederation, which is a group of states that were united under a weak central government. A group of states united under a weak central government. So you should pause the video so you can write that down on your graphic organizer. All right, so at this time, the sub, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and pass out a copy of the student-friendly version of the Articles of Confederation. And then, welcome back. Next, as a whole class, read the preamble of the Articles of Confederation and the first 3 articles. So before you move on from this, make sure you ask the sub questions you may have, or write down questions for me about the meaning of those 3 articles. Okay, so make sure that we are all aware that these Articles of Confederation granted certain powers to the national government while giving others to the state governments. What we're going to do now is we're going to divide into small groups, Half of the class is going to read all 13 articles to determine the powers the document granted the national government, and then the other half of the class is going to determine the powers given to the state governments by reading all of the articles in the Articles of Confederation. We're going to come back after you do that and we'll share what you have found. So, we should pause the video now to have this group discussion. Alright, so next what we have, after we've shared our answers, here are what I have in regards to the state government powers. So we need to make sure that everybody in the room has these 4 bullet points written on their graphic organizer. The state government powers that were given to the states under the Articles of Confederation, they could determine taxation. Every state had their own court system. Every state was responsible to enforce laws passed by Congress, and all powers that were not delegated to the national government were given to the state governments. Pretty broad, if you're asking me. So the national government powers, we all need to make sure we have these listed. We have the limited powers to the national government. The national government could declare and wage war. They could make treaties between other countries, settle disputes between states. They could petition or request money from the states, but they could not collect any money from the states. And they could also direct the operations of land and naval forces. So feel free to pause this video and give everyone time to write down these 6 bullet points. All right, before we move on, I'm going to ask everyone to take out their devices, log into Google Classroom, and fill out this form about the Articles of Confederation analysis form. It's about their weaknesses. So we're looking for issues and concerns regarding governing the nation of Articles of Confederation. You should use your copy of the Articles of Confederation to help you answer those questions. Once everybody has submitted that form, we're going to come back to this video to finish up this discussion. All right, so I'm going to ask that the sub go over these questions that were in the form with you and see what some of our responses were. So the questions the sub has on a piece of paper. Please participate. I will leave him the call cards so that he can, or she can, facilitate this whole class discussion. All right, welcome back. So lastly, I want to make sure that we have some consensus in regards to the weakness of the Articles of Confederation. We need to write these down in our graphic organizer. So these weaknesses are the answers to those questions you submitted in the Google form. Weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation were that the national government couldn't impose or collect taxes. There was no national currency, so each state could have their own different dollar bill or their different coin, their different form of money. There was no national court system. There was no executive branch. There was no power to regulate trade amongst the states. Each state was only received like 1 vote, regardless of how large the state was, which is not equitable and doesn't give each state proper representation. 9 of the 13 states were given 2/3 majority, like was required to pass a law. And then unanimous consent between all 13 states was needed to amend the Articles of Confederation. So, we pause the video, give everybody time to write those down in their graphic organizer. All right, so now after this lesson, we should all be able to summarize like what the Articles of Confederation were, when and why they were written, the strengths and weaknesses of them, and potentially think about the challenges that come from governing the country under these articles. So if there's time left in class, you'll watch the news next. If there isn't, have a great day. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you tomorrow.